You can, if you want, like the exact same things you liked when you were 10. But if you do, you need to grow up. That was the point of my blog. I'm not glad Stanley is dead. I'm sad you're alive.
A few years ago, Amazon Studios paid $100 million trying to find an answer to HBO's Game of Thrones, and they bought the rights to Conan the Barbarian. The studio head, Jennifer Salke, axed the project after reviewing the scripts. Not because Conan isn't still popular, but because of concerns over toxic masculinity. Barbarian is a bit barbaric. It's true. He settles too many of his problems with violence, and he decapitates too many of his enemies. But in his defense, they were trying to kill him first, most of the time. But even Conan is not without his virtues. His character is a role model when it comes to self-reliance, courage, honor, resilience, and resourcefulness. You know, the last thing we want to be teaching young men these days.
Between the time when the bridges spanned forgotten rivers and the rise of petty kings in shadowed halls, there was an age undreamed of, and unto this age came three brothers, the gruff, mighty satyrs, troll hunters renowned across the wilds, destined to face the foulest beasts and unravel treachery in gilded courts. It is I, their chronicler, who alone can tell thee of their saga. Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
Luckily, the comic book market has been selling Conan comics like hotcakes, and Jim Zub has been doing a heck of a job writing great stories, and the art by Rob Delatorre and Doug Braithwaite is world class. Now available at a comic shop near you.
Pretending that the writing in comic books is so good. Oh, please. Every superhero movie's the same thing. A person who doesn't have powers gets them, has to figure out how they work, and then has to find a glowy thing. Justice League, glowy thing. Iron Man, glowy thing. Spider-Man, glowy thing. Captain America, glowy thing. Glowy thing, glowy thing, glowy thing. And again, there's nothing wrong with a man writing comic books. There is something wrong with adults thinking they're profound. The folks at Stan's company, Team Stan, wrote an open letter to me and said, "You have a right to your opinion that comics are childish and unsophisticated. Many said the same about Dickens, Steinbeck, Melville, and even Shakespeare." No, they didn't. No one ever said that. No one ever said King Lear or Moby Dick was childish and unsophisticated. If you ever read a book without pictures, you'd know that.
Okay, when I said everything you said is wrong, I meant everything you said is wrong. And yes, they did. They did say that. I almost want to skip over this point entirely. But I did mean everything. For instance, critic George Henry Lewes in 1840 accused Dickens of excessive sentimentalism and caricature, saying his characters in Oliver Twist were unrealistic monsters with exaggerated traits lacking in psychological depth. Lewes also called Dickens' style external, and his imagination better suited to melodrama than literature. Meanwhile, critic John Wilson Croker slammed the Pickwick Papers and Oliver Twist for appealing to the lowest audiences with vulgar humor and sensationalism, deeming Dickens a mere entertainer for the uneducated masses, unfit for refined literary circles. Nicholas Nickleby was called coarse and morally dubious for its theatricality, and upon its release, Moby Dick was panned for its dense philosophical style. London critics called it an ill-compounded mixture of romance and matter of fact, with a repulsive and incoherent plot. Critics from the Literary Gazette found its metaphors tedious and its tone blasphemous. Meanwhile, 1660s critics found A Midsummer Night's Dream insipid and Romeo and Juliet poorly acted and uneven. Critic Robert Greene called Shakespeare famously an upstart crow, accusing him of lacking originality as a non-university educated writer. Well, what can I say? Not everybody gets to go to Cornell. Entertainers of the uneducated masses. These old writers of literature were a lot like the writers of modern comic books. They were not the upper crust elite. They didn't have the proper credentials. They were not from the right families. But the thing that they have in common is they were, all of them, storytellers, and damn good ones. After all, if Anne Frank had used her pen to draw pictures of her family and their associates in the secret annex and made sketches of their daily lives in the form of comic strips, hiding from the Nazis, would it have somehow made her diary less powerful or more so? The same question could be asked of Solzhenitsyn or Malcolm X. Again, reading more is always the answer. Last month, the best-selling comic books in America were Batman vs. Deadpool and Chainsaw Man. Now, Chainsaw Man is a Japanese comic or manga about a guy who has chainsaws attached where his hands should be, and a chainsaw for a head. And no, Bill, he doesn't have chainsaws for feet. Let's not be silly. The animated movie is out in theaters, and I'm sure the live-action version will be coming soon. And I know Chainsaw Man might sound dumb on the surface, but I don't care, as long as kids are picking up a book and reading. As Art Spiegelman, the author of Mouse, said, comics are the gateway drug to literature. And I understand gateway drugs are something you know a lot about. But comics are also more than that. To a large degree, they are pop culture. And just as politics is downstream from culture, the culture is downstream from comics. After all, it's not just Superman, the Avengers, and other Marvel movies that started off as comic books and comic strips are responsible for everything. For Dennis the Menace, Little Orphan Annie, Buck Rogers, Dick Tracy, Popeye the Sailor, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Garfield, The Addams Family, The Mask, The Crow, The Men in Black, Flash Gordon, Sin City, 300, Red, Scott Pilgrim, Charlie Brown and Snoopy, Hellboy, Alien vs. Predator, Judge Dredd, Kick-Ass, Kingsman, Lock and Key, The Swamp Thing, Ghost Rider, The Punisher, Archie, Sabrina, the Teenage Witch, Tales from the Crypt, V for Vendetta, The Fifth Element, Planet of the Apes, and The Walking Dead. And that's not even a complete list. In a 2019 Saturday Evening Post article, Ray Bradbury told a story of when he was a young boy. And in 1929, there were no published collected editions back then. And little Ray Bradbury did the only thing he could. He made his own. He would get the scissors and clip Buck Rogers from the newspaper and put them in his scrapbook. He did this every day for years until he was 9 years old, when, as Bradbury explained, kids made fun. I took on embarrassment and tore up the strips. A month later, empty, I burst into tears, asked myself what was wrong. The answer, Buck Rogers was gone, and life not worth living. He soon began collecting again, and never looked back. As an adult, he not only kept his collection of childhood strips, 24 of his scrapbooks are still intact at the Center for Ray Bradbury Studies in Indianapolis, and he would go on to defend comics at a time when they were neither hip nor valued as art. In Belittling Comic Books and Stan Lee, you come across as one of the bullies that shamed little Ray Bradbury. Nobody should be shamed for reading and enjoying good stories. I won't say do better, because that's a ridiculous phrase, and only weirdos say crap like that. I will say read more. And in your case, read more comics. Who knows? Maybe your next book could be a graphic novel. And until next time, as Stan Lee always said, Excelsior! And enough said.